Hi, Yogi. Hi, Marianne. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Teresa, there's an email from Catherine saying, not sure I can get this meeting started.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I've texted her that we're on. Ah, there she is.
And unfortunately, I'm in a hotel in Angels Camp and the lighting is absolutely terrible and I cannot move anything. So sorry about that, guys. And I'm not Joe, I'm really me, but he's corrupted our laptop. And I don't know what he did to switch it. So when I'm home, I'll fix it. But I'm
All
gonna
right.
try to do it remotely.
No, I'm not muted. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what I went in again through the way that I was supposed to as the host. There was a special way, but then it sent it wouldn't log me in and it sent a one-time passcode, but it sent it to Melissa's email address. So I can't
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on.
I think there isn't a host anymore is what's going on.
Oh, cool.
Well, actually, this happened at Trails meeting last week because Gary wasn't there and I can't remember who was taking over and it just means you don't have any of the host features.
Right.
At
You
least
can't mute everyone, for example. Yeah,
yeah, so
but I think that's across the board.
did we lose Marianne? Oh, there she is. Yay.
Oh, good. Let me just email everybody again and say that we are in.
Hmm.
Okay.
Well, we made it. I see you, Catherine. Good work.
I'm here. All right, well, we have a quorum, and we have a couple of visitors. So shall we go ahead and get started, or do we want to give people a couple more minutes?
Is Teresa here? She takes the.
Yes, she's here, so.
Oh, there she
I'm-
is. Oh, I
I'm-
just saw. I saw
I'm
Joe's
here
name.
as Joe. Sorry about that.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Joe. Will you take the minutes?
Right,
She's gonna take the minutes in the dark.
that's it. Sorry.
Oops, sorry.
Are we missing anybody? Oh, Dieter. Okay,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought Howard was supposed to be here. I don't see Howard.
Howard is not gonna call in, but I have I talked with him today. This is about the pickleball courts
Yes.
or nets. Yeah, I talked to him about
Okay, all right.
about it. Yeah.
All right, thank
good.
you.
Mhm.
Sorry for the interruption.
No worries. All right, well, why don't we get started? And I guess the only one who's not here, I think, is Dieter. So, do we have any oral communications from the public? Nona, you want to go? I don't hear any.
Okay, do you want to wait for the public first?
Is that, yeah, is anybody in the public want to comment on, bring up anything that's not on the agenda? All right,
I actually have something.
all right, Kirsty.
I'm still concerned about Dorothy Ford Park open space and on our housing site list, and wondering what this committee is planning to do regarding looking at conservation for other parkland and town-owned land in Portola Valley. Are we going to be looking at deeds and titles and what's attached to those deeds to conserve the parkland we have and the recreation land we have?
Yeah, so,
I've written a few letters to combine conservation with open space to have these conversations, and I haven't heard a response.
yeah, I think we support the idea.
Catherine, according to the training that we had.
Oh,
from the
right,
town,
right, yes.
we cannot
We cannot
address
talk
any
about it.
issues. We can only indicate that we will consider adding them to future agendas or something to that effect. I've
Thank you.
forgotten the language. If you could help me, that would be great.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly right. We will put it on a future event agenda. But thank you for bringing it to our attention.
I think you can actually do a one-sentence response. We just can't have anything. We can't have anything complicated. And I'd like to respond that I talked to Christy after she sent that letter about several of the items that had to do with conservation, but many of them weren't within our purview. I'd also like to say that we, as a committee, sent a very clear and strong letter to the town council saying that we were strongly opposed to any housing on any open space or parkland.
Or recreation. land.
Open space.
Can we continue? Can we keep this on the agenda for every time and continue to discuss it?
We can certainly put it on the agenda for next month and talk about it and see whether or not it's something that we want, that we think that we can contribute something to.
And the other thing I had written, the committee is not on this agenda, but it is, I was up in Bellingham, Washington, and they had wildlife corridor signs. And I think some people coming into town, I know last week I had to stop twice, getting everybody else aware of it, and they started slowing down. But we have so many out of town people coming down Alpine Road and on the Rastadero and Portola Road that I just think nowhere have I seen any sign that says animal corridor. And I'm wondering if this committee could consider looking at the signs and if that feels right for this committee.
That's certainly something that we can talk about in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody
wrote-
else from the,
I wrote a week ago, so prior to the agenda, so it didn't get agendized. Because
the agenda had to be, this month had to be submitted 2 weeks before the meeting, so it was already gone, but by the time I got your note.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Things that are not on the agenda. All right, Nona.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could just take a few minutes. I would like to make a tribute, if that's okay. And I'd like to share my screen. So I'd like to try and do that now. See if that will work. Can
Yeah.
you see my screen? So the tribute I'd like to make is to Jeff Nuttall, who, as some of you will remember, received a Backyard Habitat Award from us in 2015. This is the front of the property, and you can see a small sign near the center of my screen. And that's what I first noticed when I ran by his property on Corte Madera. It says, native plants live here. It's a CNPS sign. And I talked with him at the time and discovered his yard and encouraged him to apply for a Backyard Habitat Award, which he did. And in the next screen, I guess I don't know if it'll show this. Let's see if I can make this work. There we go. Can you see the next slide now?
Yes.
So this is his yard, and the people that you see over in the upper right-hand corner from left to right are Marge and Dieter and Paul, and then Jeff Nuttall. Known to us as someone who loved native plants with just unbounded joy. Jeff was also the lead violinist, first violinist for the St. Lawrence String Quartet, artist in residence at Stanford. And he died last week of pancreatic cancer. But his backyard, everything about his yard was amazing to those of us who got to visit it. And I know that for Marge and me, we were the two who attended the town presentation of the award to him back in 2015. And he brought his children, he brought a bag full of Buckeyes, and he was just exuberant about receiving the award. So I just wanted to let everyone know.
Thank you. That's lovely. Judy.
Before I say mine, I want to say thanks, Noah. It was sweet to do that. There's two things. One is the garden club went a couple of times when the garden was much more mature than that. And it remained fabulous and ever growing. And he, every single plant there was a native, every single one. And he was more of a purist than any of us managed to be. And later in his life, he said, he had gotten all kinds of awards, including Grammy nominations, etc. And he said the award he was the most proud of was his backyard habitat award. So, which was quite an amazing thing. He's a wonderful person. So, but my oral communication is that the Sod Blitz results are out, and there will be a meeting on November the 10th at 6 p.m. on Zoom, where Mateo will discuss the results of it. And I'll post that. I'll make a post of that to the forum. And I'll also send it out to all of you if you want to attend and see that.
Great. That's good. All right. I think we can move on to approval of the minutes. I had a couple of just typos on page 3, section 4, general plan revision. Dieter's last name is misspelled. And section E on the same page, what's blooming now, it's tarweed. Hayfield's tarweed, not starweed.
Mm.
We just call it tarweed. All right. Any other comments or corrections?
I move that we accept the minutes as corrected.
Somebody second?
I
I'll
second.
second.
So move. All righty. It's
Can you
Yeah.
hear me now?
yes. Yeah. Hi, Dieter.
Yeah, I apparently I was muted. And anyway, I was greatly saddened by what Nona had to tell us. I vividly remember the visit to his property and us talking native plants. And then now, yeah, anyway, so I'm in.
Good. Thank you
Do
for
we have
joining
to
us.
Do we have to take roll call votes on everything, including minutes now, according to the Brown?
We do have to
I
do
thought-
roll call votes. So does that mean we have to go through by
I
names?
think so. I think so. That's what,
I would assume that all we have to do is, I've already got the list of everyone who's present. We say it was a unanimous vote.
yeah,
Then
Yeah.
that indicates it was everyone who was present.
Yeah,
right. If it's
And-
unanimous, no, yeah.
Yeah.
If it's unanimous, if it's not unanimous, as I always have been doing for a while, I indicate who was not in agreement. And I believe that's,
Sorry, I have to abstain because I
Me too.
came back late from Southern California, and so I missed it.
Me as I as well. Yep.
oh, right, okay, so.
we vote. I didn't. I
Oh,
missed
no,
that.
so Yogi has to abstain since he wasn't there.
I know,
and-
but did the rest of us vote to accept the minutes as corrected?
Not yet.
Let's go
Not
through,
yet.
let's go through. Judy, yes.
Oh.
Me,
Oh, God.
yes. Nona, yes.
Yes,
Marianne,
I think I wasn't there. I have to abstain, I believe. It's so long ago.
I think
Hmm.
that was, I
Your
think that
name's
may
on the
be
roll
right.
call.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. So I abstain.
You were there.
You
You
were
just
there.
left early.
Mhm.
Okay, yes, sorry.
And then we need to add Dieter and with the time that he joined the meeting, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so everyone else, Paul, you
Paul,
said
yes.
yes, Megan, yes, Dieter, yes. Okay. Got it, Teresa?
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the tree permits. There were some oak trees that were requested to be removed at 160 Bear Gulch, and a couple of us, Paul, Dieter, and I, and Nona all went to take a look at him and approve them. And I just wanted to add that they were very close to the house and were overhanging the roof. But I just wanted to note that there were some other things that we had seen. And so I did write her a note suggesting that they look at removing some of the other trees that were crowding some of the better trees. So that's done. And then I think we should move on to discussing the health of the Coast Redwood at Brookside Drive. To advise the town manager of whether it should be removed or not. So I'm not sure exactly how to start. Nona, do you want to start with this?
Okay, so I live on Brookside, and the way this got started at my end was that you wrote to several of us and said that, that is you, Catherine, wrote to several of us and said that Howard wanted, or Jeremy, I don't remember which, wanted feedback from this committee and from Bicycle, Pedestrian and Transportation as well on the safety or whether or not this large redwood at the corner of Brookside and Portola Road at the north end of this U-shaped street should be removed. And so we have a very tight-knit community on Brookside. I wrote to everybody on the street. We have an email list, and I got 20 responses, which is the majority of the adults who live on the street. And the consensus of a large majority is that the corner is unsafe, that it's a blind corner leaving Brookside onto Portola Road, whether or not you're turning left or turning right. I asked people whether or not they would be in favor of removing the tree, and the votes were essentially evenly divided between keeping the tree and removing the tree. The people who thought the tree should be removed did so because they thought doing so would make the corner a little safer, maybe a lot safer. The people who said to leave the tree said that the tree is a healthy tree, that removing the tree probably wouldn't make the corner any safer, or that removing it could even make it a little less safe if a lot of shrubs grew up, because then they would be within, they would be blocking eyesight as well. So in a sense, it's kind of a toss-up in that everyone agrees that it's not a safe corner, but whether or not the tree is very much at fault is less clear. It is the scenic corridor, and the tree is really right in the right of way of the street, of Portola Road. But there are so many redwoods, I don't really think it enhances the scenic corridor in that particular location. The other thing that people pointed out is that the tree is split at the top, but so are a lot of redwoods. And while that may mean that it is, has a weaker point, it's probably not reason enough to take the tree out. So that's the feedback from Brookside, and I agree with all of it. I think the tree should not be there, but I don't know whether or not taking it out will make a big difference to safety. And we're not the safety committee anyway, so.
We are not the safety committee.
Yes.
I got a long email from Dan Cornu, who I think lives near the corner and is really concerned about removing this tree, really would like to remove this tree because although there's only been one accident apparently in recent history, neighbors hear people yelling at each other constantly, yelling at bicyclists, that kind of stuff. And so he's really pushing us to remove it to the extent that, that I'm not sure who, but he wanted to propose planting new trees somewhere else that would be more suitable. Either redwoods up the creek a little bit, or maybe some oak trees in a more oak suitable location as a way to mitigate the environmental loss. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of agree with you that it is the safety issue. And we are, yeah, Judy,
So,
save me.
this is, well, I can't save you. I can just say this came up several years ago. Howard asked me when I was chair. We looked at it. We had a little thing. It never actually came to the committee because they didn't ask to have it come to the committee. And I think several years before that had come up too. So it's sort of a perennial problem and issue. And I don't know why it came from Jeremy instead of Howard this time. But my strongest feeling is that we're not the safety committee. And that really for us to stay embroiled in, well, does the safety outweigh the health of the tree, et cetera? It's not our role. I think our job is to say it's a healthy tree and it has a split at the top that's a little concerned, but you know, if it were in another place, we would not recommend that it come out, period. And I don't think I think because there's so much safety thing that it's not one of the trees we should throw our bodies across the road to save like sometimes we do, but
Yeah.
I just, so that's one thing. And the other thing is I really wish we've tried that when something like this came up that involved more than one committee, that we could have a little bit of cooperation, coordination, conversation between somebody from our committee, somebody from Bicycle Safety Committee, so that we don't end up kind of saying, oh, well, they say one thing, we say another. I mean, A, it's a bad look, and B, it doesn't come to always the best decisions. So I felt a little badly that that we hadn't managed it in that way. And I think it would have been smarter for us to do that, or for, and ideally Jeremy would have suggested that from the beginning. But for example, I think that we had been having some conversations about it before the bicycle committee, and yet none of us, as to my knowledge, went to them to give them our input. Dieter wrote that great letter about getting out and walking up and down and looking at the safety issue and looking at the tree. It was very detailed, and it would have been great if that could have been sent to the bicycle committee so that they had it for their input.
I think they haven't met on this yet.
So
Oh,
Trails and Paths has,
okay.
but bicycle safety has not, and that
I'm
may
sorry.
be the appropriate venue for this.
Right.
Because I
right.
think all we can say is that it's healthy, and it contributes a lot to the environment.
So then we accomplished that coordination by having Patty be here. Then I'm really glad you came, Patty. Thanks.
Would it be possible for me to say something?
I'm
sorry I
not,
came
I'm
late.
on Parks and Rec. I have nothing to do with safety.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's right. Parks. I was thinking that somebody from Bicycle Safety.
No, I got more than I
No.
can chew with Parks and Rec, Judith. Thank you very much.
But we do have some public comment, I think.
Yes, we do. Yeah. Who is
So
this?
It's Cornelia Tilney. I'm sorry I got on late.
Oh, okay.
I live on the north end. Nona also lives on the street, and I think you were talking about Dan, who emailed me today because he's in France and has the flu, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning for him.
Yeah.
I actually spoke at a previous meeting, which I thought was the Bicycle Safety Committee meeting, because that was chaired by Ed Holland, and I thought that was the committee he chaired. And so they recommended specifically that the tree, I thought, be taken down. The issue for me, I live basically one house in on the north side of the street, and on the northern side of the, north of the street part. And we've lived here 12 and a half years. And I didn't really think about this as to why it seemed like it was getting more dangerous, but of course it's because the tree's been growing, like duh. And the tree is much wider than it was when I first moved here. And I shouldn't admit this, but I'm a pretty aggressive driver. And I really have trouble getting out of the street there. I'm also a huge tree lover. And I'm the kind of person, we had a legacy tree in our backyard that got sudden oak death, and We paid a fortune to McClenahan to try and save it, even though it was much to our benefit to try not to. And I cried when I had to take the tree down because it was leaning on the house. So I completely understand how everybody feels about these trees. We also have a ton of redwoods in the back and have had to work very hard because, sorry, my phone in the other room is going off, but have had to work very hard because we've had branches just inexplicably drop into our yard sometimes. So we actually ended up doing what the Corners did, which I sort of hated to do, which was cutting a bunch of the branches on our trees halfway off, because we just had this sudden drop of like, I'd go out and look at the branches and there wouldn't have been a big wind night the night before. And all of a sudden, you know, there was no evident decay on the branch and it would have ended up in my backyard and could have killed somebody. So what I had pointed out with Jeremy the last time, which I certainly don't expect this from the town, and I want to make sure that I'm clear that nobody thinks I do, because I didn't want it to be, I could have phrased it better the last time, but the town really doesn't have the ability to manage this tree, and it needs to be managed. It's not in a great location because it's not getting tons of water. It's up above in this area that, you know, has stone around it and a lot of pavement around it. So a good part of it may have difficulty actually putting out roots. And you have bikers coming around that corner really fast, as well as cars. I have begged the police. I can't tell you how many times I have gone to different, you know, local police and asked them, could you just put, you know, a motorcycle cop there so I can put something on PV Forum, or so you can start giving people some tickets. But I have almost had bikers hit, and I'm a biker too, or at least I was before I hurt my neck and biked a lot. I have had bikers almost hit me so many times. And what you have to do, even when you have a big car like I do, is you pull in front of the tree and then you kind of peer through, you know, the rhododendron and stuff like that that's there. And then you kind of listen, you have both of your, you know, even if you're just turning right, you have the windows open and you listen really carefully. And then when you can't hear any cars, you pull out in front one more time to make sure a biker's not coming, and then you can turn. And I just, you know, I've almost been T-boned a couple of times. I've certainly almost had bikers hit me and swear and scream and have to pull out, no matter how much trouble I take on stuff. And the reason I'm speaking to you about it is because I just don't want there to be an accident that then we all sort of say, oh, I wish we had done something about it. Like, I'd be happy to have some more trees planted, you know, behind where we are around the creek that are redwoods or whatever that might mitigate it. But it's not a great looking tree. It does have the split top, which also should be managed, and the town would, you know, should be cutting that back. And then the branches on it, if you look up, are kind of scraggly. And so I sit there and say, do we really want this right next to the road? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
So can I suggest that we respond with something like, the tree is a generally healthy tree. The safety issues here are, you know, probably outweigh that. And if the tree were in another place, we would feel strongly about saving it. But given where it is, we have no strong opposition or something like that.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Because I think we shouldn't really be sliding into the safety concerns. It's not our job. Although having said that, I would say that if they take that tree out, rather than replanting something else, even though it's a scenic corridor, they should widen the bike lane in that area so that everybody has more room around that curve. You know,
well, I think
no visual impediment at all and a wider bike lane.
The idea was to plant trees someplace else.
Yeah.
But I think that's good. But I
Yeah.
also think, just you know, building on what Cornelia said, is that tree is not going to get any smaller. So, you know, if it's grown as much as it has over the 12 years, just seems like the sooner we get, if it's gonna come out, the sooner we get it out, the less expensive it's gonna be.
I think my inclination is just to say that this committee use the decision as a safety decision, and we defer to whatever bicycle, pedestrian, and transportation safety decides.
And I don't think we want to plant a single redwood tree somewhere. That wouldn't make any sense. And particularly not
no.
on that street.
No, I think we can talk with them about other ideas, but that's in the future.
There actually are some others nearby that are in the back of our property along the creek there. So you could plant some. There's a small parcel that's the town parcel that's on the others. Our property goes just across the creek for some inexplicable reason. It's not really useful area. And then there's a small town parcel, and then there's a tiny parcel for the sewage station that's been abandoned, that's owned by whatever the sewage company is. And so if you wanted to plant any other redwoods there and have them be near ours, then you would have, it would make sense.
The other suggestion that Dan made was a couple of oaks to screen a pump station.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah,
That's on the backside of my property.
okay, all right.
I think the West Bay sanitary facility there is going to get removed. It's no longer being used.
Okay,
That would be nice.
Yeah.
good.
Thank you all very much.
All right.
Thanks for coming, Cornelia.
Yeah, that's great. Old business, so oversight of town-owned properties. Are there any updates? I kind of did this vaguely because this agenda.
Sorry,
had to-
Catherine, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we are required to take votes on any action that we propose taking.
Good, okay. Then let's vote on.
Wait a second.
Let's see.
Wait a second. I'm sorry, but I have no idea what we were ever requested to do. This did not come to the whole committee. It wasn't part of the agenda as more than just a statement on the agenda. So I'm not clear what we're voting on. If it was just a request that came to Catherine, what are we voting on?
Nona's
So-
statement. Nona, make your statement again and let's vote on that.
Yeah, so let's read the agenda item, which is discuss the health of the Coast Redwood at the Brookside Drive Portola Road juncture to advise the town manager. And the motion I would make is that we advise the town manager that we view that redwood tree as a safety issue, not a tree health issue, and that we defer to the decision of the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Transportation Safety Committee.
That's great. That's a good summary of it. So.
So I move that we adopt Nona's
Okay.
language.
Can we get a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, thanks, Paul. All right, I'll say I'm voting for that language. Nona?
Yes.
Yes. Yogi?
Yes.
Yes. Teresa? Mary Ann?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
And Judy, and then Dieter.
Yes.
Dieter, are you there?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Okay, all right, unanimous then. Thank you for reminding me of that, good. So back to the town-owned properties, because I had to have this agenda in so early this month, I didn't have any specifics. So it's not written the way it should be, but anyway, do we have any updates on Frog Pond, Yogi? Does anything happen?
No, I mean, we're still waiting, let's say, for the town official response back to the individual that has questioned the maintenance that was planned a while ago, and internally we still have to meet and review a draft of the biologist report. So that's still pending. And Trudy, I think we'll get together shortly and see if we want to comment on it or what we comment on. More recently, I walked actually the border this week for the first time in a while, where the school expansion is going on. And I think at one point that maybe something for the Boy Scout, a little cleanup would be beneficial. I mean, some garbage kind of collected around the fence perimeters, nothing too bad, but certainly don't want to let that sit there for too long. And then going forward, I think I will reach out again or reach out to the school to get a better feel for what type of fencing they plan. Because as we all know, the building is more or less right on the end of the frog pond, and with the viewing platform, and I think it's an ADA ramp that is being built there as well. I think if possible, the town should give us a rendering what type of fencing in general they now plan on that side of the school property. That's all I have.
Okay. I don't think there's anything new with Town Center. Triangle Park.
Triangle Park last month, or in August, I said the subcommittee would meet and look at it. I took a quick walk around and there's nothing urgent, and I have not gotten the subcommittee together. And the subcommittee is Paul, and last time someone else volunteered to be on that subcommittee with us and I didn't write it down. So that was one of the reasons I didn't call the subcommittee. Can you remember if you said you were on the Triangle Park subcommittee? No, I guess
Nope.
it's just Paul and me, then
Paul.
we'll do it.
Okay.
We'll
We'll
do
get
it.
down there.
Luckily, it's a little tiny thing, so
Can I make
I'll-
a comment?
yes, sure.
I'm sorry, I'm in the car, so I really can't see everyone.
Oh,
except
wait,
for
I shouldn't have said, yes, sure. I didn't realize, I thought it was somebody else from the committee. Why don't you
Yeah,
wait till,
so-
wait till we're through this, Christie, and then at the end of it, Catherine will ask for public comment. This
Yeah,
item.
is it public comment for each open space or after you discuss all three?
Let's just do it at the end of just running through the different properties, and then you can bring up what your comment is after that.
Sounds good.
All right. Is there anything new with Springdown?
Yes, I went there Saturday and found only 3 sprouts of the tree of heaven. They have now
Yay.
been treated. There were so many that I had trouble knowing whether I'd treated them all. So I think they're all done now.
Okay.
And it did get mowed after our last meeting. I spoke to Justin and it did get mowed
Good.
a
Okay.
little later than it should have, but
Yeah, it made them easier to find this tree of heaven, that's for sure.
yes, yes.
Yeah. All right, and then the Rosati and Dorothy Ford open space. I don't have any updates on those.
Well,
Dieter?
I regularly go to the Dorothy Ford open space.
Excellent.
And I've been pulling some Detrichia, a lot less than a year ago, and have that well under control. There is a little bit of second growth of the grasses, but nothing that should be done now.
Okay, good. All right, Christy, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yes, one comment on the triangle area by the entrance.
I'm having a really hard time understanding you.
Okay, let me see. Do to make that better. Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay, great. The entrance where the trucks go
Okay.
in and
I
out.
can't
of
understand
the
what,
rock,
so,
and they have
Chris-
now-
Christy, I don't
Can't-
think we can understand what
hear
you're
you.
saying.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's better.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to put it on speaker then. What's going on? The entrance for Corte Madera, the trucks going in and out, there used to be a big rock that is now under their pile of dirt that they've put there. So previously, there was a guy smoking there that I commented on that I thought was a pretty dangerous place to be smoking. And now I think they have to go inside their cars to smoke. But is conservation concerned about just covering up things that are nature like that?
That's not.
It was
that's not
huge
Triangle
rock,
Park.
bigger,
That's not
like 3
Triangle
people
Park.
could sit on the rock, and now it's a pile of dirt. So
Alright,
I just don't
That's
know
not
how
Triangle
to,
Park.
I'm bringing
Is-
that to your attention.
It's not Triangle Park. Didn't you say?
That's none of the things that are on this agenda item. It's none of these open spaces.
It's not on the corner of the Triangle Park. Okay,
I don't,
Um,
you're talking about the school construction.
right, but the corner of that is the Triangle Park, right?
No,
No.
Triangle
No.
Park is the park, we're at the corner of Alpine and Portola.
Oh, I'm thinking of the across from Dana's, that triangle. What
It's
do you
part
call
of the
that?
That
Park.
Frog Pond Park, and this is, and the school entrance area is not part of that.
Okay, well, okay, then I should have brought it up at the beginning, but I have now said it, so I don't know what you want to do with that. And then my other comment is conservation is also endangered species, is that correct? It's not only plants, but also animals? Is that?
There's certainly habitat.
Okay, so when I first walked Dorothy Ford Park, I did see the wood rat nests that are there. And I think this committee, I took pictures of them, should be aware of how many are there and what might happen later if this land is taken. And I think what we learned from the Stanford Wedge, and it would also be on Dorothy Ford Park, is that the San Francisco garter snake is endangered species, and it has a cycle all year round. So making sure that we also protect that as well. And then they found bats and some other things that I was unaware of across the street, or at least down the street. So how is this committee looking at what's at the Stanford Wedge and assuming that it's also at Hawthorne's, at Glen Oaks, at Dorothy Ford Park? So how do we best protect endangered species?
Yeah, I think what I guess my first reaction to that, and we should talk about it more later, but I don't think that this committee should be looking at individual species.
Well, it was written by the Fish and Game of California, so they wrote it up. And knowing anything within a mile of a site, they assume it's, or is it 2 miles? Maybe somebody on this committee knows. Then they assume it's also.
Related to Dorothy Ford Park, as I said before, this committee sent a note to the council strongly opposing any building there. If there is building there, there's state law that regulates the removal of the wood rats and
That's right.
moving them someplace else. And if there is going to be building there, there'll be an EIR report, and that will be the time for us to step in more
Okay.
strongly.
Can we also list the animals when in the letters in the future? That would be a request. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. Unless we have anything else to talk about on town-owned properties, we can move on to Public Works. And there's a couple of issues. They're both they're really related. And that is finding a temporary location for the pickleball nets. And I'm sure Patty is here to talk about that. There are several suggestions from Howard, and I have pictures of each of the 3 suggestions that I can show. So why don't I guess that one point that I want to make is that they are about 40 pounds and they're on wheels, and they have so I'm not sure how long they are, but then they stand on perpendicular rods with casters, and each of those they're 2 feet long. So it's really it's not a huge amount of area to put them up against a fence. But I think maybe Patty is probably better positioned to comment on this. Unless, do you want me to show the 3 different locations first?
That might be best, or maybe I can just set the stage for what we're talking about here. And thank you for having me, and thank you for addressing this. And I promise I won't bring up the dog park.
Thank
you. So back in July, the town council approved the purchase of what we call kind of semi-permanent pickleball nets. What the pickleball people are using today is nets that they have to roll up and store in the storage net. And then every time they play pickleball, which is every day, sometimes multiple times a day, they have to bring out the nets, unroll them, set them up, and then tear them down. So these nets that we are proposing to buy at this stage, as you mentioned, Catherine, are fully set up. They do not break down. And they are, as you said, on wheels. They are, I don't know the dimensions, but you can put 2 pickleball courts on each side of the tennis court. So they're roughly half the length of the tennis court. And we are looking, because they're on wheels and because the pickleball players will be rolling them in and out when they play, and they need to be off the courts, obviously, for when tennis players are playing. We are looking for where to store them. There have been several options. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm trying to share my screen, and it looks like Nona is still sharing. Nona, can you turn off your sharing?
I'm not sharing. My screen is not being shared.
Okay, that's weird. All right.
But Catherine, we can only see your browser. I don't know if you were trying to share the JPEGs. All we can see is your file folders.
Well,
I see a picture, but it's very small. I see your whole screen.
So I have them all open on my screen, and my screen says I'm viewing Nona's screen.
Maybe stop and
I don't
reshare.
think there's anything on my screen you're seeing.
That's so weird. Okay.
We're seeing your bottom image. You've highlighted 5032, and that's the one we're seeing.
I don't know. I have no idea what I highlighted. So
can't you see what's on your screen? It doesn't show on your screen?
I have the 3 photographs tiled on my screen. That's all that's on my screen.
Why don't you?
Oh God, I hate this.
If you close your server, if your photos are open on the screen, if you close your server, then that's what we're seeing. Maybe they're behind that. I don't know if it's your whole.
Maybe try stop sharing and reshare. That might.
Yeah, stop share. All right.
Same thing.
Does that?
Well, those are the 3 areas that we're looking at, although they're very small.
Okay. I think I know what's happening.
Double click it and see if you can get it to get big.
I mean, they're full size on my screen.
So when you go
All
to
right, so-
share, can you select the one you want to show? You should be able to see on your desktop,
Here.
the image is open and
Yeah.
select the one that
Okay.
you want.
There you go, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay, which one is that? Does that have Justin standing there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the one where the grapevines are currently planted.
Right,
Yes.
right. And okay. This is along the field. Do you see that other one?
yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and then okay. So we should have three photographs.
So that's
One,
the third. We see the third right now.
right, and that's under the oak trees by the facility behind the tennis courts.
Right.
So I think so we'll start with this location. I don't think it's a great place because I think it's facing the fields. It's going to be much more visible and it's going to be more of an attractive nuisance. It would
Wait,
be
facing, this is not the facing the fields photo you're showing us. This is the one that's behind the Public Works yard,
Okay.
facing the street.
yeah, okay. All right, so that one, they could grade the soil that is next to the fence that is parallel to the tennis court fence. And then they would put asphalt down. But Howard is worried that it's going to be a bit of an attractive nuisance having it be there in the pathway, even if it's pushed up against those fences. And I think his preference is along let's see, can you see the Justin one?
No.
No.
Okay, let me,
So- Can you leave this one here for just a minute before you go to it?
Yep.
When I thought, when he called me at one point about something, I thought he was talking about along the fence, between the fence and the road, not along the fence between the fence and the tennis courts.
He was. So there are three areas, and you're talking about the new area where the grapevines, I think, are currently planted.
Right now, the picture that's showing is the one that's by.
I know.
Yeah.
That's a different picture. So the one you're talking about was the one that had Justin standing in it.
right, and I think that's probably the best place for them.
What does Park and Recs want?
Parks and Rec would like to store them on the all sports court,
On the basketball court.
on the all sports court, yes. But that, we've been told by the town that that is not an option. So
So,
unfortunately, I'm sorry.
So of the three,
I have been told that it's possible that there are insurance issues for safety, and I have also been told that they were not meant to be storage areas. So,
Howard also said to me today that what did he say? Never mind. That the courts there's very little space between the fence and the edges of the court. And so as people run for balls, anything that crowds that buffer space is gonna impinge on the players' ability.
May I make a
I
suggestion?
disagree. I completely disagree with the town's response to that, but I've been told that that's not an option, and that's why I'm here. So,
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I would recommend the following. From a perspective of the Conservation Committee, if it's not visible from the scenic corridor, why don't we refer to your committee where you want it?
Because number one, the town has not, the town wants me to look at options that are outside of the tennis courts. So that, I guess, takes it into your territory, because the ideal place that Howard would like to plant them is along this fence, but more towards where the grapevines are planted. And his suggestion has been that they have to remove the grapevines because they are in the process of damaging the fence if they're allowed to grow. And that we would take those out, put asphalt there, and that's where they would store them. So my understanding is that is why it has come before the Conservation Committee.
Yes.
I think it's good
I'd
that it
like to
came to
make a
us
comment.
because we, yeah.
It's
Go
a
ahead.
public thing, and I think we should at least have it be a public conversation.
I'd like to make a suggestion that this seems like the kind of thing that the town center subcommittee of our committee would look at in the field with Patty, so that, and then make a recommendation to this committee for us to vote on.
I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Does that work for you, Patty?
It is, if we can be expedient about it. We've been
Yeah.
waiting since July, so as you can imagine, I've got like 200 pickleball players breathing down my neck.
But you don't have the net, you don't have the nets yet.
The
Right.
town will not order the nets until we have a place to store them.
Okay, got it.
Would they be able to roll in from inside the court, or would you have to roll them around and in? I'm just curious as a public member that plays pickleball.
I'm sorry, Christy, what was the question?
Once they remove the grapevines, could you get the nets from inside the court? Or would you have to go get them from outside the court, roll them around and in?
That you would have to
You see
get
what I'm
them
saying?
from outside the court.
They would
Oh.
be
They're only 40 pounds. I mean, they're very, that's actually not the issue.
Okay. Yeah, I want to know what you guys want, and easy setup, easy takedown.
Yeah, easy setup compared to what they've got today. They would just be in heaven. It's not the
Okay.
greatest solution, but it's much better than what they have today. And they are rollable. I mean, our recommendation is that they do be on asphalt, so we would have to pave, because otherwise you're going to drag dirt and leaves and everything onto the court.
Yeah,
So that's another reason that this area back by the maintenance shed is probably not ideal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy to meet with whoever you want me to down at the town center as quickly as possible.
that's fine. We'll get a meeting of the subcommittee together ASAP to take a look at that. Good thinking. Okay, and the only other item was that the grapes, Howard felt that the grapes could use being replaced because they're really destroying the fence the way they are now. And I talked to him about pruning them way back, like practically down to the ground before they do that, because they've allowed the branches to get too big, and they're going through the fence, and they all have sprouts near the base. So I think we can just regenerate them, get rid of all that dead wood, and then there won't be so much foliage pushing into the courts, which was a problem that players were complaining about, losing their balls into the grapevines. So I think it's a compatible with what you guys are trying to do, Patty. And if some of them need to be replaced later, I don't think that there's a problem with that. So.
Okay.
Why don't you
So
have
will
that?
somebody,
It's integral. Why don't you have the town center subcommittee do that? The two items are very related, since the
Yep.
subcommittee meeting, why don't they do that as well?
Yep.
So will
Okay.
somebody reach out to me then?
I will.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Patty.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, now we get to move on to the Conservation Committee checklist for ministerial approval of ADUs. And Judy and I we met with Laura, and we spent some time going through some of the thoughts that she had, which she pulled out of some language that she's creating for the title, whatever. I'm gonna stop sharing now.
It was language she had done for the SB9
For the
units.
the SB9 unit. So that is appendix A. And I don't know, I don't really think we should go through all of them. I hope everybody's had a chance to take a look at them. But basically, we thought in order to deal with the conservation easements that so far the town doesn't have a record of, that we should put in a requirement that they submit a current site survey that has all of the utility trail conservation easements, and noting that it might require a title search. And then a few around the structure, a number of them around landscaping. And then there's some on lighting that we wanted to make sure just that language was somewhere. It's not so much a conservation issue, but we just want to make sure that the lighting comments don't get lost. So does anybody have any comments on, after having gone through this?
Can I just add, while
Yes,
you're
Judy.
thinking about that, the language is the way it is because this is meant to be a ministerial checklist. So it has to be something that someone in an office can pretty much look at and say yes or no. They may need to visit, but it can't be vague. It's got to be very, very specific. So, and when Catherine and I went through the language, we had the sort of mandate. It's not going to be effective and it won't work and they won't adapt if it's not very specific, almost measurable kind of specific. So that's why some of the language is the way it is.
Well, that actually was one of my comments when I reviewed this, that I was pretty stunned. I didn't know where it had come from. I didn't really know what our objective was. I mean, it seems extremely different from what we talked about 2 meetings ago. And when I looked through this, I thought, how is somebody sitting at a desk going to have any idea what an awful lot of this is? And are they honestly going to spend the time to do this? That was just my concern. I don't know if anyone else had that kind of a reaction or not, but I did.
It's certainly a lot more involved than I expected it to be. I thought it would be much more like what we drafted up originally, which was probably a fifth as long as this.
But we had ideas and concepts, and someone
Yeah.
sitting at a desk can't ministerially approve a concept or an idea. They have to have something very specific, which is why the measurements and all of that. It's sort of, our idea is made very concrete. The thing to remember is, unless it's on this checklist, it's not going to happen because the town has no other way to have any other control over these things. ASCC is not seeing them. The other zoning, some of the other town rules may not apply. So if it's not on these checklists, it just doesn't happen.
I think the checklist is great. I had 4 like word changes. So how do you want us to provide feedback on very specific things? I think it's a great list overall.
I agree.
Mhm.
Your hand is up, so why don't you go first?
Okay, Well, the first one under structures, structures and parking areas shall not cross natural drainages. Could we say disrupt natural drainages rather than cross? I think that it doesn't have to cross it all the way to completely ruin a drainage. Under new landscaping, and then the third
Wait,
item down.
Can I stop right with that one and let's do them one at a time? The problem with disrupt is how do you decide if it's disrupted? I mean, you know, you could say can't go more than 25%. That's the
Okay.
kind of problem we ran into when we were trying to draft it. And then
Intrude,
disrupt is,
would intrude be better? I think saying cross means it goes from one side to the other. And if intrude means it steps over into.
Mhm.
How about blockage?
I think we want less than blockage.
Enter or
Yeah,
even
yeah, I know,
even-
but
even
percentage
enter,
blockage, no
can't-
more than.
can't enter something. Can't,
Okay,
I mean, you know, the idea of a line, there's an edge to it. It can't go across that edge somehow.
okay.
However you
Can't
would say
enter.
that.
Encroach?
Alter the flow path of a natural drainage, because something could poke into the edge of a drainage and not really disrupt the way that it functions. But are we saying we don't want the flow path to be changed?
If
I
it
think
pokes in,
that's a
doesn't it
judgment
automatically
call.
change
Yeah.
the?
I don't know
Catherine?
that they would know what would do that.
Before we get heavy into edits, who owns this document? Because I don't have it. And so I'm not really comfortable trying to capture these changes. Do you own it?
I own it. Yep.
Okay,
I'm taking notes on it.
okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I don't know that we're going to solve all these word issues. I'd like to just raise them and then you can decide whether or not they could be addressed with
Yeah.
word changes.
Cross,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
Under
ca-
landscaping, the third item, new planting, I think it should say new planting is limited to 5 to 30 feet around the new unit, because 0 to
Good.
5 is not supposed to have any planting.
Good.
That's a very measurable, you know, we're just
Yeah.
making our lives harder if we say you can plant 0 to 5.
Yes, yes.
Good.
Good pickup.
The next item down, fencing, where it says enclosing personal garden space. Can we set a limit on the size of the personal garden space? Ideally, it should be small, but it should be small in relation to the property. That's just a suggestion, because otherwise someone can say the whole thing is personal garden space.
Yeah.
And
About height, what about height? Shouldn't we have a height thing in there?
That's a good,
I mean.
Wouldn't
10
hurt.
yep, I've have that as a note. That's a good comment too.
Yeah, one of the things is you're putting fencing around your personal garden. Often that's vegetable gardens, and you certainly don't want the deer to get into that.
That's what I was thinking when I was, yeah.
okay, and those were my sort of major word changes. I think
So,
it's great.
so Nona, would you suggest, in terms of the size, that you do it as a percentage of the lot size, or how would you make that more concrete to limit it?
That's a good question. I don't exactly know, but you know, maybe it has something to do with what the personal garden is used for. I don't know. I agree. That's a hard one, but I think we want to avoid having them say the whole thing is a personal garden. That's all.
Yeah. I think that we can work on the wording of that.
And is what we meant a veggie garden? And should we say veggie garden?
Well-
Because it's on a larger property. Remember, these are ADUs, so it's on a larger property that's already either fenced or not
Yeah.
fenced. And we're talking about fencing within fencing, so should
But
they
they-
be able to fence even, you know, their daisies, or should we restrict
Well-
it to the veggie garden?
If you don't fence your roses, you might as well kiss them goodbye too.
Yep.
Right.
And
So,
don't
yeah.
plant any roses. I would rather see a vegetable garden, because a personal garden, what's a personal garden?
Right.
Yeah.
what's it
And
mean?
Well,
Anybody in the office going to say a personal garden? And if it's a vegetable garden, it's not going to be huge because I don't think anybody's going to start a farm. So that would, in itself, then that would limit the size if we call it a vegetable garden.
Excellent. Okay, good. Okay, thank you, Nona. That's really helpful. Does anybody else have any specific comments?
What about taking the maximum floor area of the ADU and then taking a percentage of that? That sort of makes it independent of the large size of the whole property.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad way of looking at
Yeah.
it too. We should definitely consider that. Thank you. That's great.
I have a comment about the, sometimes if ADUs get larger, they put rooftops, and rooftops can be lighted and noisy for the people next door. So is that addressed at all?
So is that a conservation observation, Christy?
Well, it might deter animals. What are we doing with lighting on the top of a building?
I think
So
ADU
that-
cannot have rooftops. They, I think, a single story and no rooftop usage.
Oh, that
That's
would
not
be
true.
good.
My neighbor has a rooftop ADU.
That's not allowed. I mean, that's not in the current ruling.
ASCC
think-
was out here.
Maybe
It's
they need a
definitely-
checkoff list, it on the checkoff list. I don't know.
The rules have changed, I think.
Okay.
No, I think they can do basement. The cities can write whether they want basements or rooftops. I know they can limit that.
Okay, the lighting is the last section. And I know the town as a whole has pretty strong lighting policies. But Judy and I left this whole section here just because we wanted to make sure that lighting issues were caught up, were captured in this checklist.
I have another comment on the landscaping section.
Yeah.
The full point, or the first point, as a designer, it makes me a little bit uneasy to limit the number of plants of the same species to 3 in a row. If we could just leave it to state that they shouldn't be in linear plantings.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not sure where this section, I think this actually came from.
Well, I think in general, we've encouraged the variety, wanting it to look more natural and some variety. So you didn't have a long line of the same bush or the same tree, or
Sure, but that, I mean,
and as a
depending on the,
designer, that's limiting, Megan.
yeah, and depending on the plant you use, you may want a cluster of 7 of them, and it may make sense in the context of, depends on the size of the landscape, it could still look perfectly natural. So I think 3 feels a little arbitrary and also very small.
Could it just say something like any linear planting should be composed of at least 2 species, something like that, so that you don't
I think
have.
I think you capture it with clustered planting rather than linear planting. I really
Yeah.
think that captures the goal of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And I don't think there's any reason to put a number on that. Okay.
And I think bridges, such as the supplemental housing at Jim White's lot with the 13 units, there is a little spring back there. And if it's an official bridge that cars go over, so that they do have their art studio on the other side. So they are, there is a permit if it's a major stream that needs to be from Fish and Game. So it all depends on the size and what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to address that, but I don't see anything in there that says if it's this large, it needs to be addressed with Fish and Game.
I think that's a state
It's a
rule that
state law.
applies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would like to get back to Megan's comment, if I may.
Mhm.
The no more than 3 plants of this same, this is more about a row. So what if we take out of the same species? If we say no more than 3 plants shall be planted in a row, which then would make the row very short.
I just think the cluster
that-
cluster planting gets at that point. I don't,
Okay,
Well, I think we should not specifically get hung up with a number for a specific species.
yeah,
But we should just say row planting, no, and we strongly recommend clustering and leave the number of plants alone.
good.
I think Patty has her hand up.
Patty, yeah, hi.
Hi, thanks. I just didn't know if you got any public comments. I was just curious as to why this is only for projects on lots greater than 1.5 acres.
That's a great
Is
question.
that a rat hole that you've already gone down and I should
Oh,
just,
we only went partway down it. The original number that was on the sheet of paper that Laura gave us was 2 acres, and that seemed too big to me. So I went down to 1.5 acres. And it can be any size. That was just a number pulled out of the air. It could be 1 acre. I
Well,
don't,
I think.
1 acre would cover more people.
No,
Yeah.
the checklist, the whole checklist applies to every ADU. Only that
that's
first
what I was
bullet item.
thinking. Why would you
Only-
exclude any ADU?
The whole checklist applies to any ADU on any lot. Only
Right.
that first bullet point talks about the size, and that was because those are the sizes that might potentially have conservation easements and things like that. And we wanted to make sure we knew about those when they were planning these.
correct.
And tiny little lots, like I live on, less than 1/3 of an acre. And so the easements that are on mine are well-known and well-mapped because at the time it was, the things were done that they had certain trails and equestrian thises and sewage that's, and the ones that get missed that we don't see on the maps, the known maps are these conservation easements, and it's the bigger lots that potentially have those.
Yeah, but Patty has a good point, Judy, that we're not talking about conservation easements only. We're talking about utility, trail, et cetera. And it's a valid point. It seems reasonable that all projects should require submittal of a current site survey, period. Right? If they're going to put an ADU, you should have a site survey, right?
You
How
should.
else do you know that they're crossing a trail easement? I mean,
Right. To your
As far
point,
as,
Patty,
yeah,
I think
as far
you're
as I
right.
know, you have to, and when I even built this little thing, it's entirely under my house, except for a few feet, I had to have a site survey. So everybody has a site survey as part of their plans. So
But
we're
it's-
trying to reach out to this larger thing about the known site surveys, that the typical site surveys that they already do don't catch the conservation easements.
Right.
That's what we were somehow trying to get at.
I agree with that. I'm just wondering why you would exclude certain properties from that. I mean, I think every plan pulled in the town, my humble opinion, whether the size of the lot or wherever, should have a title searched reflecting any easements on that property.
So
Just for
that's,
setbacks too.
They haven't, yeah, you typically don't have to do a whole title search. Because it adds, it adds significantly to the expense.
That,
If we
and that-
want to
yeah,
protect our easements, I think we should.
Clearly.
that's exactly right.
If,
And that's
if we can
exactly
do
what the
that, I
point
think it would be
was.
great. If we can include that.
I say put it on there and see what happens. My humble
Okay.
opinion. I'm not on the committee.
That's why we take public comments.
That's exactly right. So that suggestion was to remove, have it be for all ADUs. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Good. Okay.
Yeah, I think there was one ADU built on very, very close to a trail, and there was some concern about that.
Yeah.
Christie, don't go there.
I
Just
know.
don't go there.
Okay.
See, this is why I don't come to other committee meetings. I just get, you just drag up my dirty laundry here.
Okay. Let's move on. So what's the next step for this, Judy? I think we'll make these comments, make these edits, and then circulate for a vote next month, do you think? Would that
Yeah,
be the way?
I don't think it's urgent to get that it gets
Yeah.
in. But
No.
it's got to get in before the end of the year. So if we draft it up with these things and maybe talk to Laura about the possibility of a couple of them, then that first one especially, then we'll have it in hopefully final form and just can vote on it next time.
Good. Okay, Wildfire Preparedness Committee discuss their draft 10-year fire. You really made a great effort to get good titles, Nona. This is really awesome. Okay, so
Okay.
take it away.
All right, I'll make this brief. At the last Wildfire Preparedness Committee meeting, Jennifer Hammer, working together with Wanda Jenner, presented a draft plan, which they call Fighting the Ember Storm Together. And the main components, I'll just mention briefly, is that it has a series of 10-year goals, which consist of having defensible space created on all properties in town, ember-resistant vents and roofs on all homes in the town, education and outreach so that residents know how to defend against an ember storm by the end of 10 years. And by the end of 10 years, every parcel in town will be part of a FireWise community. So this is a very ambitious plan. It builds on things that other towns have done and things that have been talked about in this committee before I was a member of the committee. I just want the committee to be aware that this is the direction that they're going in, and it would sort of mirror some of the work that conservation does, in the sense that this committee they're proposing that this committee work with the town and with residents to develop funding sources for home hardening and defensible space. My personal feeling and my feedback to Jennifer and Wanda was that I can't think of anything at a 10-year time span that I think of. If I want to be here in 10 years, I have to be there in 2 years, and then I have to be there in 5 years. And I think of it much more sort of stepwise than that, with some adaptive management along the way. But I wasn't present for the entire meeting because I was actually joining from the airport at the time. So that's where this is going. The second part of that meeting actually dovetails with what their proposal was, which, this 10-year plan is really ambitious. And that is the Woodside Fire Protection District is also thinking very big. And there are three things that I have to report on that. One is, as you probably heard, they're doing a sole contract with a company called Flame Mapper, which has some unique capabilities that Woodside Fire Protection District is very interested in terms of thinking about fire risk from vegetation, but also structure to structure conflagrations. And so they're working with them to do basically fire assessment in a sort of neighborhood approach. The second thing is that they have applied for a grant from the Community Wildfire Defense Grant Program, and they're asking for $2.6 million to do fuel reduction in Woodside for $1 million and fuel reduction in Portola Valley for $1.6 million. And their goals for Portola Valley are to do clearing 50-foot swaths, wide swaths along both sides of Los Trancos Road and Alpine Road for evacuation planning. And also to do what they call mitigate 250 feet of hazardous fuels along the top of Coal Mine Ridge. So this is pretty ambitious fuel reduction that they're thinking of. This is a grant. I don't know when they'll hear whether or not the grant is awarded. And then thinking beyond that, Woodside Fire is updating the defensible space ordinance in terms of what would be required 0 to 5, 5 to 30, and 30 to 100 from a residence, and also designating some areas as what they call WUI fire areas that will have even more restrictive property maintenance requirements and building requirements. So people are really feeling very serious and ambitious about fuel reduction in town.
So Nona, when you
That-
say
and any-
50 feet clearing,
I'm
And
sorry.
just one question.
Yeah, I'm
Does it in
hearing two
any
things at
way-
once.
Does what you just mentioned, does it in any way talk about Windy Hill, which is not in our town, but which is completely overgrown?
No, there wasn't any mention of that. But a month previous, we did have a presentation by MidPen about the Windy Hill fuel reduction plan. So, Judy, were you
I
saying
just had a
something?
question. You said 50 feet clearing along Alpine and Los Trancos. You mean cleaning up fire wise? You don't mean clearing. Do you?
Remove up to 50 feet of hazardous fuels on either side of the
Okay,
roadways.
so hazardous fuel removal. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you think is hazardous, I guess.
Well,
but-
and the word clearing was what scared me. I think once again, I think
yeah,
our potential role in this is to make sure that, that they don't go overboard with taking out everything that might possibly burn and leaving us denuded, that there is a sweet spot where you
Yeah.
accomplish safety without destroying habitat. But they've been pretty receptive. Don Buller's been pretty receptive to that. So hopefully we just have to keep reminding rather than fighting about it.
yeah.
So Nona, do they have anything about continuing maintenance? I mean, once you've cleared these places, it starts to grow back. So they should have a plan to do continual maintenance.
So I wasn't there for the entire presentation by Woodside Fire, so I can't answer that question. All I have is the document that they provided afterwards, and it doesn't really address that. I
No.
think the vision for the town effort is that, and by that I mean like the Firewise communities and all of that, is that there would be it'd be everyone's responsibility to do the
Yeah.
maintenance on their properties, and that gradually over time, it gets easier and easier once you have things basically under control.
The expensive parts in the beginning and then maintain it so it doesn't get expensive again.
Right.
Yeah, and so one of the things I think that they see as an activity of the Firewise committee is working with the town to provide extra funding, either grants for low-income families to do fuel maintenance, and then grants with matching funds. So a homeowner might have to might apply for a grant but have to apply but do a 50-50 split on the cost of fuel reduction. And I think the vision, you know, on Jennifer's part is that that the committee would somehow decide these grant requests for the town in the same sense that conservation decides tree removals or advises the town on tree removals. It's a little different, clearly.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
Good. And how about, you want to talk about the rodenticide
Oh,
presentation?
okay, really briefly. You know, we were going to do an evening event on rodenticides as a follow-up to what we did several years ago. I don't actually remember what year that was. And we got, it was canceled because of the COVID lockdown, and we kept postponing it because I think the consensus was that we wanted this to be in person, not over Zoom, the subcommittee that was working on this. I talked to Jeremy a few weeks ago, and he said things are going to be opening up and they're ready for us to do it if we want to. And it takes several months to plan it and advertise it and get the speakers and all of that sort of stuff. So the question is that what we want to do? And when do we want to do it? Do we want to do a different kind of evening presentation? And you know, what time frame do we want to be thinking about? I guess I could add that the rodenticide program that we had envisioned, which was basically all fleshed out, we had the posters and the speakers, is that we were going to get a presentation actually from the town doing a report on how the no poison program on town-owned properties was going, how many gophers they were trapping, what it was costing. There was going to be a report on sort of what the legislative actions are currently. And then I think we were going to have a report from someone like Steve Felt, who's the veterinarian at Stanford, who has handled some of the cases that we've come up with. So the dead bobcat, for example, and then there was the fox that I took to UC Davis. Anyway, it would be sort of, what more do we know about the status of animal mortality due to rodenticides in Portola Valley?
Well, it sounds like a great program. Can we pull it off?
Well, for one thing, we have to decide whether to reconvene a subcommittee on this. I don't think you can reactivate a subcommittee without authorization, because the subcommittee isn't supposed to live forever. It's supposed to be charged with doing something and then moving on. So I think the question for the committee is this an event we want? And if so, then we should have a subcommittee formed to do it.
I think we should do it.
It's been an issue important to all of us for a long time. So I think it makes sense to do it. You know, I think the biggest flurry of interest in it from the town I've seen was when on the forum when there was a dead animal. So I think clearly it should be keyed off something like that, because the previous time when we tried to do things about that, it was kind of like ho hum, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should do it. But if it's Zoom, I think you can forget it. It should be in a public space where people can show up. I vividly remember the nice evening on the mountain lions. And I think something along that line would work. And, you know, soon it's November, so it can't be this year, but it could be sometime early next year.
And
yeah, the last one was actually quite successful. You know, we had someone came with a barn owl, someone came with a hawk, and we had, you know, Miriam Sachs talked, and we had someone from San Mateo County Vector Control. It was a lot to pack in, but it seemed to keep people's interest.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for us to do. Spring is a bit, is busy for us just because of all of the oversight, at least for spring down, they get super busy. And so I don't know if spring's ideal, but when are you going to have when are people most likely to be using them is when the gophers get active again in the spring. So it would make sense to try to do it then.
Yeah,
before-
maybe March or
Yeah. I think we ought to move forward with this again.
I agree.
Does someone want to
I'll be on the
make a
subcommittee.
motion or volunteer for the subcommittee, or what needs to happen?
And since we
Um,
agreed to do it before, we can probably just create a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Okay, so Paul and Marianne were both on the subcommittee before, and Teresa, you were as well, but when we last met. Do we want to go with that? Or does somebody want to step down and someone want to step on, or?
I'll continue because I mean, there's a lot of work we already did.
Yeah.
I'll continue to.
Good. All right.
I can.
Teresa?
Terry-
I keep saying, you guys keep talking over me, so.
I'm sorry. So one other question then related to that is that our sort of founding members of that subcommittee really are Marge DeSabler and Jean Eastman, and they were still staying on the subcommittee, even though they're not on the committee. So can we invite them back? Is there any reason, is there any sort of new Brown Act kind of thing that does not allow us to do that?
I don't think so.
I don't think
Subcommittees are
so.
not subject to the Brown Act. Subcommittees aren't. And the idea of drawing other people in to help with our subcommittees is something we've been doing for some time. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay, great. All right, I will take that as a cue that we can pick up where we left off, basically. Okay.
Excellent.
So next meeting, I will come with a suggestion about when we might do this and what the actual program would be. Okay,
Yep.
Good.
okay.
Excellent. Okay, does anybody else have any comments about that? We can move on to a discussion of the consolidated plant lists. Megan, do you want to
I
just
would love
update
to.
us?
Yep, so this is going to be an update more than a discussion. Sorry for those who want the meeting to go longer tonight. But it's been a while since we looked at this. So I'm going to just kind of walk you through what we've put together and what we're hoping that people can come prepared to next meeting to discuss. I'm going to try to take it in baby steps and kind of control how much into the weeds we take ourselves at a time. So here we go. Let's see if my screen sharing works.
Yay.
Working? Okay.
Yay.
Looks good.
All right, so page 1 is just a sample formatting. So overall, we've looked at all of, Catherine and Teresa helped to pull together all of the various ways you can find plant lists on the website, of which there are many. And we took a stab at consolidating those into one set of lists. They're still separated out by kind of a general plant type, such as trees or ground covers. And we want to find a format that's user-friendly and relatively manageable to create and update. And so this is our first pass. The idea is that we will have the scientific and common name, of course, some little graphic symbol depicting what the plant form is. So this is supposed to be a tree. We'll indicate whether it's locally native to Portola Valley or to California or both. We'll have some indication of water use, something like these kinds of symbols down here. We'll have some indication of fire hazard and a disclaimer kind of about the limitation of that, because we have a list of low fire hazard plants, but we don't want to say that we have exhaustively rated the fire hazard of all these plants. So we'll have some statement to accompany that ranking. And then notes is kind of to be determined. So one level of input that we'd be looking for is, does this format make sense? Is it missing any really critical information? One thing we're looking at doing is to reference people to CalScape now that this is really up and running. It'll save us a lot of effort and be more consistent if we can refer to something that's really regularly updated instead of trying to hunt and peck through the resources and identify plant sizes and habitat types and all that information, since it's really nicely encapsulated on CalScape. So that's the overall format. Any overall questions about that before I go on to the lists? Okay. So the pages following are those consolidated plant lists, and you can see how we've grouped them. The goal here, this just for reference, this is which lists we've pulled it off of, and there is a key at the end if you're curious. The goal here is to provide review, and if there are plants on this list that you think are completely inappropriate to have, or if you think there's some really critical missing plant, please bring up specific plants at the next meeting. We're not planning on running through every plant on this list because they've already been talked about it at some point or another. They had to make it on the list in the first place. So we're hoping this will be just a consolidation and a overall revision without taking too much of a dive into a reworking of the lists. That could be a future effort. So
What
for
are the
example,
red lines? What are some things in red?
these right here.
Yeah.
So I've put a few in red that may be on our not recommended lists, or we're saying we don't want people to plant pines or firs for fire
Right.
hazard reasons. So those I just highlighted for consideration. So those are
Thanks.
an example. Okay, so trees, we've got shrubs, and I think there'll probably be discussion of, well, this plant doesn't really belong on shrubs. This plant doesn't really belong on. I'm open to those discussions personally, but I think in the end, there's only so much categorizing you can do of some of these. So take all the categories with a grain of salt. So trees, shrubs, perennials and ground covers, grasses and grass-like, annuals and summer dormant, so that includes bulbs. And then our discouraged plants. So this is the one list that I have taken some time to add to. And the consideration I gave this is that if it's listed by Cal IPSI as invasive, then I added it, and it's something that I think is commonly available in the trade or people may consider planting. I added it here with the Cal IPSI rating relative to it.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is the intro to the list. So hopefully everyone can take some time to take a look at those before the next meeting and let us know if you have any red flags or major concerns with it before we take the next step and start flushing out more information into that kind of standard format.
I would like to suggest that the committee expresses its thanks to Megan for this massive amount of work.
Yeah.
Having worked on plant lists before, I know how much it takes to verify and to make sure that everything is fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I like the look of it. It's really very, very nice to look at.
Yeah.
And I think on the shrub tree thing, just a height, say be above this height, it's a tree. If it has one stem, and then below that, it's a shrub.
Mm-hmm.
And just put that on this thing, they can decide whether they want it to be a tree or a shrub.
Sounds good.
I also think it's brilliant. And I know you've gone to a huge amount of work, but I was wondering if you could do just a couple more things
Okay.
on it. One is, it would be great if you could have the tree, deciduous tree versus evergreen tree. So just have branches versus a green blob for the canopy, because I think that's really something that matters a lot to people. The second thing is, it would be awesome if for herbaceous perennials, you could have some kind of a symbol that shows a runner or something like that, if it's something that spreads versus something that stays contained.
Yeah, I'll
And
think about that. That one, they may be too small to really distinguish. It's already a little hard to tell the difference between shrubs and perennials, but
yeah, okay.
it's a good idea.
And then the third thing, and this could be down the line, but I have seen lists that have done this quite well. Not for our area necessarily, but for the list that you have, which were of things that people should just not go anywhere near, or get rid of. If we had one suggested alternative that fills that role nicely, I think it would really help people. Anyway, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful list. And I agree with everyone that this is huge amount of work on all your parts, and the layout is gorgeous.
Well, I wouldn't put too much trust that I got things in there correctly, so please do review it. Teresa has done our QA/QC, so she's more reliable than me, I'm sure. Do you think that for the alternative plant, it would be adequate to reference plant right in the same way that we reference Calscape on the other lists?
Yeah,
That would be
Yes.
great. Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good.
Great, we'll try that.
Great, we'll put this on the agenda to discuss next month. All right, do we have any kudos, Marianne?
Yes, sorry, my computer was not cooperating. What I would like to do is, there was a fabulous work done in terms of the trichia removal on the trail between Goya and Los Alamos. It is actually something Beth and I were going to do, and then when I went out, it was gone. So I have no idea who did it. It was quite some work, and they removed the plants as well. So I'm going to do a kudo, and then, I'm going to say something general, but I'm mentioning that trail because whoever did it, and we don't know who it was, but it certainly deserves kudos.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea that you don't know who it was, because we sort of decided not to say thanks to Marianne for this kind of a thing. And because you don't know, it's
Yeah,
wonderful, because that encourages everybody.
Yeah, and even if I had known, I wouldn't have said,
Right.
but we don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
What was the trail, Marianne? It was Alamos and what?
It's the trail that it goes between Goya and Los Alamos, I believe. Alamos.
Got it.
It goes along the Nona's property. Stanford.
Yeah.
Okay, and anything happening with backyard habitat?
Yeah, I would like to make a suggestion, because I go through town and I see really good candidates. I would like to reconvene the subcommittee to just sit down and do something because we haven't really done anything for a long time. I don't even know anymore who. I know I'm heading it up, but I don't know who is on the subcommittee. So maybe we could figure out who is on the subcommittee, or does somebody new want to come onto the subcommittee and somebody leave the subcommittee and make it a little bit more of a working committee. We can sit in my backyard and brainstorm what we need to do to get this going again, because there are plenty of properties out there. We just need to get our act together, and I can't do it on my own. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So who is on the subcommittee, or who wants to be?
I was.
And are you prepared to do some work?
I guess I could do some work, yes.
Good,
Typically, I
okay.
did the inspections at the place.
Yeah, inspection, you see, inspections is later. We
Yeah, I
need to
know.
figure out the upfront work. Because definitely nothing has happened in 2 years, actually. And I feel so guilty, and that's why I would like, a few people who are prepared to work with me on this, who really work with me.
Sounds like
Anybody else?
sales.
Once again, you might reach out to someone like Marge, who was interested, involved, started the thing and has some time and might be willing to help you out.
I can certainly do that. That's a good idea. But anybody on the committee? Teresa?
Marianne.
Any interest?
Not really.
I mean, there must have been people on the committee. This wasn't only a 2-people committee.
Well,
Oh.
from the picture that was taken at Nuttall's, it was Paul,
Marge.
Marge, Dieter,
Dieter. I think we were all on the committee.
right. But same thing, those were the people who were good at inspections.
You see, and that I would leave intact because that's really good for the inspection. But maybe we could have maybe a little bit of a different committee for doing the sales work, so to speak. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking it out.
The subcommittee can't have more than 4 people on it, so. 4 of
Right,
us.
but
4
Mark
of
is
us.
already gone.
Yeah,
So-
so, Marianne, you can put me on the list. I'm happy to help.
Okay. And Dieter, do you want to stay on it?
Well, I would be very happy to do the inspections.
Okay,
I-
okay.
Do not want to drum up new people.
Okay. So let's give it a try. Paul, Dieter, Catherine, and I. And I'll reach
Okay.
out to you for a meeting, okay?
Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay. Now for tip of the month, I haven't really given this one much thought.
What about the berries? We always do the toyons. The toyons look very good.
Oh,
They
this is a
do.
Good year
That's
for
what's
Troyans.
blooming now, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
so
So
I'll do,
Catherine,
I'll
I
do the
had,
berries.
so Catherine, I had asked if at some point we might want to consider suggesting it was a good time to think about either fall planting. It's November. I don't know if it's a reasonable suggestion for folks to consider, what they might want to add to their native landscaping. And
Yeah,
also, I don't know when we might want to think about it, but I was just curious if we wanted to say something about it's a good time to prune back your dead bushes like your coyote bush and stuff because the nesting season's over. Right? That
mhm.
So just a couple thoughts, but this may not be the month for either of those. Although I think planting, maybe it is.
Yeah, I
You're-
think,
Well, with planting, the tip might say it's better to wait till it rains. Plan on starting when the rains start.
but it's time to prepare and think about it.
Prepare.
Yeah, so I'll do something on that. That's great. And I'll do the berries. I'll do the berries again.
One other thing I could say is the September rains did bring up the Italian thistle and the geraniums. And if you get them now, they're real small, they're weak. Some of them are dying because they aren't getting any more water. Might as well get them.
I have a
Good.
suggestion.
Yeah,
Judy has this great tool for getting little weeds like that. What about a tip of the month being the tool that Judy uses to scrape away weeds? What do you call that, Judy?
Cool.
It's a long handled thing.
Oh,
that
the
has a-
scuffle hoe?
Yes.
I don't know
Scuffle.
what it's called.
Or a hula hoe.
Hula hoe.
Is-
What about just a tip of the month? This is how to do it really easy on your back and get them while
Yeah.
they're vulnerable.
It's the one that has like a square little box on it.
Well, mine's a little triangle, kind of a little
Here's
triangle.
a triangle.
Yeah.
The hula ho is a kind of a box like, and you just kind of can drag it across the surface and cuts them
Right.
all off.
I think that, say, making the job easier with the right tool might be a good tip.
Yeah, it
I think
really
those,
is.
those are great tips. Yeah, okay, good, all right.
Go out where you had the thistles last year. You
Yeah.
almost certainly have them this year, and the hula ho
Right.
will kill them all.
Excellent. Okay, now for new business, the hybrid committee meetings are expected to begin in January of 2023. So I think we'll have a couple more Zoom meetings. And then hopefully we'll be able to get back to seeing each other in person. I just want to do one brief highlight overview of the Brown Act training. And okay. So just a couple of points that this applies to all town council appointed standing committees. As we said before, it's not subcommittees. And they have, the goal is to have them be open and publicly accessible. And so there's rules about agendas, open public comment at the beginning of the meeting for anything that's not on the agenda. And then an open comment after each agenda item for public comment. One of the things that we need to really keep on top of, and this is the thing that I think we're most likely to run afoul of, and that is the issue of serial communications. They can equal a meeting if the number of participants exceeds the quorum, and that can be over time. So if we had a subcommittee to talk about the redwood tree at Brookside 4 or 5 years ago, and then this year we brought in a couple of new people, technically that's a violation because we will have been over. So that you can see how those kinds of things can sneak up on you. So there's two different forms. There's a daisy chain where person A calls person B, who calls person C. So it's a linear thing. And the other one is a spoken hub, where person A calls multiple people. And the Kara who gave the presentation made a point of a tip that for each specific topic, that you only have one person that you talk to or 1 or 2 people, so that for all of the redwood related stuff, we have the same couple of people that we talk to about those things. So you don't inadvertently bring in more people and exceed the quota. So, okay.
I think that's the one we're gonna have to be the most careful about, because that's the one that we sort of have been informally doing without thinking about this much. Something will come up and there'll be an email about it, and various people start weighing in, and we're all on the mailing list, and we effectively have a meeting that we haven't done any of the stuff you're supposed to, notice, minutes, etc. So we just have to be much more aware of that and really rein that back in.
Right. And I think the key is that you're coming to a collective concurrence that you are understanding the other people's point of view. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. It just means you understand where they're coming from. And that's what we don't want to happen, is to have those kinds of communications going on with a quorum not in public. So that's super important. And probably the thing that we're most likely to run afoul of. The other items are social media. The bottom line is you can use it and you can post in it, but you cannot participate in a discussion versus social media. And then texting between committee members about business is not allowed, but scheduling or other process topics are okay. Again, it's just, we don't want to come to any sort of agreement outside of a formal meeting.
So Catherine, I'm sorry,
yeah.
I hate to prolong this, but social media, you can use and post, but not participate in a discussion. So the forum, if something comes up that's about, a conservation topic, we have been in the habit of one or two of us sometimes responding for clarity, et cetera. Does it mean that we can't do that, or is that considered a post?
I think that
No.
was, my understanding was that that is not a problem.
The
Okay.
forum is not considered social media because it is not accessible to everyone, according to what Cara said during the presentation. But I'll find exactly how she addressed that, Judy. But she said that because you have to be a resident and you have to be signed up and registered. I don't remember what all the particulars were, but she indicated, I thought that the PV forum did not constitute social media in this context.
That was my takeaway also.
Yeah, that didn't come up. The one that I went to that she did, it didn't come up. Okay. Because certainly if a bunch of us were all commenting, then we would be seeing one another's points of view and we would be.
Yeah,
I think
you're
if we
right.
if only one or two of us do it, then it's not a problem.
Right.
Can I ask a question on this?
Yeah.
At the end, maybe. How about at the end?
Yeah, let's finish it. We're almost done. We can just finish this. And then lastly, or second to lastly, is anything that's not on the agenda that comes up needs to be agendized for the next meeting if we're going to talk about it. And then agenda items need to have informative titles. They need to be shortish. They need to be less than 20 words, but they need to be informative so that the public knows that we're going to be making a decision on something or that we're going to be discussing something. So, so that it's not too vague to be informative. And then there's just a couple of things for Teresa, which she probably already has, but the minutes need to contain some specific things that are highlighted here. So that was my takeaway. I went through her presentation a second time just to make sure I got all the notes. So that's it for that.
People would you send that out to all the members?
Yes, I will send that to everybody.
So I have one question or comment. One of the things that I brought up at the training was that when we have a work day, we typically have more than a quorum there. So if we go to Springdown and Weed or something like that. So one thing we have to be careful about is when we have more than a quorum doing something, we have to be careful about what we talk about, basically.
Right. We can talk about anything but committee business.
But see, what we're doing is the committee business, and that's why it's kind of a very fine line, I think. Right? I mean, we're talking about.
I'm not sure it's that fine because I mean, it's the public part is the decision making and the discussions when we're actually out there doing the work, unless we're talking about, maybe I'm wrong, but unless we're talking about future work that we want to do, we're just implementing a decision that was made in public. I don't know.
I think if we're talking about the work being done there that day, I think it's fine. You cut this, I'll cut that. How many of these bushes should come out? That's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Implement. Just can't, yeah. What was the tendency to do, of course, is talk about this other thing, the redwood tree, That's what
right. Yeah. Okay. And then just we need to start talking about projects that we want to add to the budget for next year. So I think we just need to think about that there in January, there's going to be a workshop that the committee members are attending where we will bring those ideas forward and discuss them. So I want you guys to just think about things that you would like to see us do, and we can bring them to this workshop, hopefully. So and then another new business is a joint subcommittee similar to the fire one, but this is focused on sustainability, nature and science, and trails and paths. And it's between Woodside and Portola Valley to foster collaboration. So
So you want me to talk about that? I'll just be
Yeah,
super
sure,
quick
sure.
here. A woman named Elena Vanderhort, who is the chair. Woodside has one committee named the Environmental Sustainability, Open Space and Climate Change Committee. Which I thought sounded like a big thing to bite to chew off. Anyway, they approached Sustainability Committee, and I've been speaking with Scott Elrod since I interface with them. And we decided the most efficient way to do this would just be to have a couple of people from each of our various committees meet with them. They want to find out what we're doing, tell us what they're doing, seeing if there's some ways in which we can work together so that we're both not reinventing the wheel, etc. So it'd be nice if two of us could go to that sort of working group. I'm happy to be one of them. And if somebody else would like to join me, you would be welcome.
If any volunteers to participate?
When is it?
And no, we don't know yet. It's just
Oh.
being formed,
Okay.
just being formed.
I would be interested if nobody else is.
Okay. And I could also, if you're reluctant, I could go once or twice and see what it's like and report that back and see whatever. But we can start, you and I, Marianne, we can.
Okay.
All righty.
Yeah, I think Marianne, I think you'd be great on that committee. Okay, and then lastly, discussing whether we want to have quarterly work days. That, and maybe Nona wants to just say what her thought was, so I don't do it.
I was just thinking that it was actually really fun when you guys organized the one at Springdown. What was it, a year or so ago of weeding? And it seems like so often things don't happen when we really want them to happen, on Springdown especially, but maybe on some other places. And I just thought, we all have these battery operated tools now, what if we all just got together and invited other people to come and, I don't know, cut down some things?
I'm there.
Yeah.
It's fun to have a group go out.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, we accomplished something.
Yeah.
That's
I do it
different
every
from-
week. It's really fun, people.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't
it
that
is.
hard. I did organize the Springdown one. It was last
Yeah.
spring and it wasn't that hard to do. And there was, almost no response from other people we reached out to. But we could also do it, in conjunction with Scouts. The Scouts look for things to
Yeah.
do. We've done that when we worked at Frog Pond and we planned a Scouts Day, and then a bunch of us came out
Yeah.
also, and a couple people from the ranch. So I think if we do it thinking we're going to get a big response, we'll be disappointed. But if we do it thinking here we all are, and we like to do that stuff, and it's kind of a nice way to hang out together, as long as we're careful not to talk about business, then I think I love the idea. And I'm happy to organize another one for Springdown in the spring.
We are
Okay.
doing it. We're doing it for Frog Pond. I think almost now regularly, at least twice a year, with Dana, myself, and then some of the neighbors.
In terms of Springdown, we just have to be careful because we could not possibly do the weed whacking. Okay.
No, it's not going to take the place of that.
Okay.
Yeah, individual weeds, you could start knocking them down.
we might go in after they mow, for example, and find a few places that we want to clear a little more to plant some seeds or whatever.
You know, remember I was
that's
killing
what
all
we
the
did.
thistles.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also the broom day, which is
Broom
typically
pulls.
around the 1st of March. And so maybe we can, I don't know, we'll start with a broom pool and then in May or June, do something else.
Yeah,
Okay. And Yogi,
But-
will you let all of us know when you're doing something at Frog
Yep.
Pond?
Yep.
That's, yeah. The more people we have, the more fun we have, and the more people we'll
Yeah.
attract. So, okay, well, I think we're the
I'm
end
sorry,
of-
I think that I deflected Christie from making a comment because we were in the middle of something.
Oh,
But
right,
then when we
yes.
came to the end of it,
Yeah, my comment was back with the Brown Act, because we want to help you not go against the Brown Act either. So I'm having a hard time. Would you rather the chair gets a request for an agenda item, or is it best that I, and this goes for all committees, send it to the entire committee and then there's no Brown Act issues?
the chair, always to the chair.
Yeah, send it to the chair.
Because sometimes it just sits, and I want everyone to kind of chime in on whether they want it on the agenda.
We
or
can't all
not,
chime
no?
in. We are not allowed to chime in. Send it to
Yeah.
the chair, and if it doesn't get agendized, goose the chair.
Okay.
Yep.
That I
Yep.
needed to clarify because I was doing the big group. Okay. Well,
No.
I've done it 2 different ways, and I just wanted to, maybe the public needs this education too.
Probably.
From the other side. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, well, with that, thank you. It's the longest meeting I've run. So, all right, let's
Yeah, you know,
go.
I wanted to make one quick comment, because we're running over so much. We have to be really careful in terms of time, because I have been in meetings, and I'm not anymore on that committee, where the meetings became 3 hours, 4 hours, and it will be the death of the committee, because nobody, can really focus more than an hour and a half. So I would sort of also, when we're talking the public, when we love the public, but it's also important that the public understands that we can't possibly have these incredibly long meetings, because we won't achieve anything. Because it's just not human. A meeting can't go on forever. And we have seen this in the fire committee, and everybody left at the end because everybody was burned out. So I just wanted to put a little bit of caution in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Well, can somebody move to adjourn?
I
I'll
move
move
to adjourn.
Let Nona do it. I made all the motions the whole evening.
I think we're all ready to adjourn,
second.
so I move.
All right, do we have to do a roll call vote for, or can
No.
we
Yeah, I
just
think
say
it's unanimous.
Who seconded?
unanimous?
Who seconded?
Judy,
No, she moved.
No, Nona moved.
I
Donna
move.
moved, Judy seconded, and I
And-
say yes.
All in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
right, good night, guys.
Good night.
Night.
Adios.
Good night.